Welcome. Today what we're going to be learning about is getting ready for our plant or slash flower dissection. And so we're going to be kind of looking at the basics of what we need to know about plants. Now, we've covered plants a ton already in this year, particularly with leaf structure and photosynthesis and all of that. And we've learned that plants are essential for any food web, ecosystem, etc. So it's really important that we kind of understand a little bit about these types of organisms, producers, autotrophs, that are so essential for life here on Earth. All right, so when we look at plants, really there's two broad spectrums of it, non-vascular and vascular. And so the ones that are non-vascular, kind of like mosses, the fern that I had hanging in the back of my classroom, those would be examples of organisms that come from a common ancestor way in the past. And so they're oftentimes not going to have stems. They're not going to have true leaves necessarily. That doesn't show up until later on as plants evolved and gotten onto land a lot more, that we start seeing vascular plants, which include non-seeds and seed plants. Now, most of the plants that we probably know about is that of seed plants, that they originate not necessarily as asexual reproduction, but can reproduce sexually. So let's go ahead and take a look at that here. So what we're going to do is watch a video. You're going to follow along here on the basics of the sexual reproduction of plants.
In this video, we will be looking at sexual reproduction in plants. Did you know that there are an estimated 390,900 plant species known to science? This diversity of plant species is in part due to sexual reproduction. In plants, sexual reproduction is carried out in the flowers. The flowers contain the sexual organs. Let's start with labeling the different parts of a flower. The petals and the sepals help protect the flower bud and can be brightly colored or scented to attract pollinators. The stem and the receptacle are the parts that connect the flower to the rest of the plant. The stamen is the male part of the flower. It consists of the anther, where pollen is produced, and the filament, which is the stalk that supports the anther. These structures are responsible for the production and the positioning of pollen, the male gamete. The female part of the flower is called the carpel, and this consists of three parts: the stigma, a sticky land leaf for pollen; the style, where the pollen grain descends; and the ovary, where the female gametes or sex cells are located. Within the ovary, ovules produce female gametes. So how does pollination work? Pollination is a transfer of pollen from the male anther of one flower to the female stigma of another. Flowers can be pollinated in different ways, by wind and water, or by pollinators such as insects, birds, and other animals. Flowers pollinated by pollinators are structurally different from those pollinated by wind or water. Look at the differences in size, scent, and color of the petals, and the positioning of the stamen and style. Here are some key differences. Why do you think they are different? Did you know that pollinators are very important to our food supply? They pollinate plants that are responsible for bringing us 1 out of every 3 bites of food. Once a plant has been pollinated, fertilization can occur. Fertilization results in the production of seeds. A mature pollen grain containing 2 male sex cells has landed on the female stigma of the same species. The pollen grain grows a pollen tube that goes down the female style to the ovary, where it enters through an opening called the micropyle. The male sex cells travel from the pollen grain down to the pollen tube to the female ovule. Here, one male sex cell fuses with the female egg, fertilizing it. This develops into a seed. The other male sex cell attaches to 2 cells in the embryo sac, forming an endosperm. This provides the starchy food for the seed to grow. The ovary enlarges and becomes a fruit, surrounding the internal seeds. The fruit and seeds are dispersed in many ways, some even by humans, where they will again grow into a new plant under the correct conditions, completing the long cycle of sexual reproduction in plants. So there we have sexual reproduction in plants. Pollination has to happen before fertilization. The male pollen is produced in the anther, where it is then dispersed during pollination. The female parts of the flower are the stigma, style, and the ovary.
Please like and share our videos with your friends. If you have any questions that you want help with, just comment below.
All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this a little bit more. So we're back into our notes here. So the biggest thing that allowed plants to transition from being photosynthetic organisms in the ocean to that on land was, well, the ability to sexually reproduce. So pollen and seeds through meiosis become part of that. The stomata and cuticles, remember that photosynthesis within the leaves that allows for the gas exchange for metabolism to occur for that energy production. The lignin, which is part of that cell walls. As we know, every plant has a cell wall around it, gives it that structure. And then the vascular system of plants. Remember, water being an essential component of photosynthesis. So these plants have to have the ability to allow water to go in and out. So for the xylem, that's it with an X, the xylem allows, through the use of the properties of water, for the water to climb up the plant. This allows the plant to grow upwards towards the light, and then the phloem is the way that it carries those sugars that it makes throughout the plant so that it can grow or go to mitochondria for cell respiration. So again, we talked about, again, they're made up of cells, so they need the DNA, they need all the macromolecules. So how do you get the chnops needed for everything? And so that's where the roots come in at. The roots, actually, when you grow a plant, the roots are actually the ones growing the quickest and the first, because the plant has to establish itself in the ground to not only absorb nutrients and to get water for photosynthesis, but also it provides a little bit of structure. It anchors it to the ground and serves as a placehold so it's not going anywhere. So again, that cell wall, that rigidness of the plant and being secured on the ground allows for transport materials, photosynthesis, all that good stuff. And so, just to kind of go back again with the leaves of photosynthesis. Remember, we have a cuticle, which is the outer portion of here protecting against the sun. The mesophyll, this is where the site of photosynthesis occurs. And then the spongy mesophyll, which is where a lot of the gas exchanges take place. Again, this is where photosynthesis takes place. Now, when we look at plants, again, we kind of put them into flowering and non-flowering type of plants. So if we go back to our first picture here, we did vascular versus non-vascular, and so we come back here and vascular or non-vascular and vascular. And when we go to vascular, we have two different types. We have gymnosperms and angiosperms. Gymnosperms are the ones that are naked seeds. These are your pine trees, pine cones where the seed is exposed. Whereas here with the flowering plants, you have seeds, but they either are monocots or dicots, depending on the types of leaves that it produces. So if we take a look, a monocot, this is like a corn type of plant, all right? Usually one cotyloidin. This is the little baby plant that's in there. But generally, when you look at leaves of monocots, they're more kind of aligned along the stem of it. Their vascular bundles are very arranged here. They have a very fibrous root, whereas dicots, like your apple trees and stuff, usually vascular put into a ring. They have a large taproot that goes down and then multiple flowers that go with it. So what you're going to be doing in this lab is looking at the parts of a flower just to kind of see what are them and what parts do they do to work on reproduction, okay? So go ahead and take a look at the plant reproduction reading that's located in Schoology. Thank you.